I'm a nobody, and this is nobody. Wait.
So they took maybe 20 bucks and an old watch? Mr. Madsen, did you even take a swing?
So Nobody is the latest entry into the John Wick clone genre of action movies, and it stars Bob Odenkirk and RZA and Christopher Lloyd and Michael Ironside, and is about a nobody who gets swept up in a comically over-the-top action movie. That's basically the story. And I enjoyed this movie, but not to the extent that I wanted or hoped for. There's a lot wrong with it, to be upfront. But let's talk about some things I liked. Straight off the bat, I think Bob Odenkirk is really good in this. He does a great job of portraying this loser kind of character who is being demasculated and wanting to do something about it. He portrays that very well, and throughout the movie, as he kind of finds himself again, he brings a flair to it that I enjoyed. It's like a coming-of-age story. It's a coming-of-middle-age story, and I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. And I think RZA is actually a very competent action star. He's really good in this, surprisingly. Or not, maybe not surprisingly, he's just good in it. Christopher Lloyd is like 112 years old and somehow still looks like he's having fun doing this. I mean, he can barely move, but he's fun. Michael Ironside, it was nice to see. And there's some pretty fun action sequences in this. There's a lot of these over-the-top, insane action sequences that just escalate in a way that I thought was pretty entertaining. Every action scene kind of dwarfs the next, and they're all pretty well choreographed, pretty well shot, and pretty well executed. I can't say anything bad about the stars, the execution of the action, or the stars in the action doing their choreography. I think it all lands pretty well.
It's been a hell of a day.
Most movies make or break in the first act for me, and unfortunately this one kind of got broken up in the first act. Meaning there are a couple of issues that I have in this first act that didn't really allow me to get into the movie so much. And that's not to say that the rest of the movie is great. The second and third act, they're not really, but we can go into that more. The biggest problems I have are in this first act, though. There are two big things that I don't like about this first act. One is the setup of the main character, which is shown in these very weird, quick, truncated montages that don't do a great job of establishing who this person is. Bob Odenkirk is supposed to be established as this kind of loser guy who is being demasculated and is trying to hold his composure. And that is essentially what they are trying to do through these incredibly truncated montages that last about 5 minutes. You have the first shot of the movie is big title card saying Monday. And at first I went, oh, I didn't realize this was going to be like a week in the life of Bob Odenkirk. But no, it's not. In fact, it's literally a montage of every day of his week and what he does on those days. And it is about 5 minutes long of, Monday to Friday, he goes to work, he takes the metro, he drinks his coffee. On Tuesdays, he somehow misses the trash every single week. I don't know how that's possible, but he continues to miss the trash. And then Fridays, he does pull-ups in front of his wife's real estate sign. And it's supposed to convey this feeling of him being like sleepwalking kind of through life. It's supposed to convey this feeling that he isn't living up to his full potential and he's doing this same thing every single day and it's worn him down. But it just doesn't do a great job of actually communicating that because you don't actually get into the life with him. If you want to establish this character as someone who is doing the same exact thing every day and getting tired of it, then you kind of have to show that to the audience. You can't just make it a montage because you don't get the full effect of that. If you want to show his life, you have to show his life, and they don't. And this is one of the bigger issues in the first act because the first act is incredibly short. It's way too short. It doesn't do a good job of establishing any character or any motivation or really anything. the first act flies by way too fast, so you don't get a good feeling of anything.
I wish they'd have picked my place, you know?
Why didn't you take him out?
I was just trying to keep the damage to a minimum.
Yeah, how's that working out for you?
But I said there was two problems with this first act. The one being this poorly structured mess that it is. But number two is it does a very bad job of giving our hero adequate motivation. Very bad. The John Wick comparison is very apt here because it does feel like it's trying to be that type of action movie. But in John Wick, the main thrust of the story is John Wick trying to get revenge on some guys who killed his dog, which is very simple. But the message or the moral, I don't know what the right word is here, behind the dog was that it was a last heirloom to John Wick's now dead wife. And when his dog gets killed, that's his last tie to the person he loved. So it makes some sense why he would be sent off into a bloodlust rage. Here, the hinge of the first act is he just, like, beats the out of and murders some guys on a bus for doing nothing but mildly harassing people and being drunk. That's not a great motivation for our main character to be swept up into an action movie. Again, the first act is supposed to put our characters in a situation where they actively decide or are pushed into the story. John Wick is pushed into the story because the last thing that connected him to his wife is murdered, and now he wants revenge. In this, what pushes Bob Odenkirk into the story is his house getting broken into, and he felt demasculated by it. So he just takes it out on some dudes on a bus that happened to be connected to a Russian mob boss. There's a lot of coincidence in this movie, and coincidence is what sets up the whole movie. And that's why I don't love this movie, and why I say the first act breaks this movie. Because having coincidence prop up the rest of your movie is such a flimsy foundation to build everything on top of that it just ends up collapsing in on itself when you immediately start to think about anything that it's doing. More times than not, I was kind of cheering or rooting for the bad guy, or the supposed bad guy, because he's the victim. Like, his brother gets almost murdered on a bus for just being drunk. He gets almost killed, and then Bob Odenkirk slices open his throat and puts a straw in it so he can breathe. He gives him a, what's that, tracheotomy? What's that word? I can't remember. So that he survives. So this Russian guy whose brother has been turned almost into a vegetable seeks revenge. He's supposed to be the main character in that context. He's the one seeking revenge because the main character of this killed his brother, or almost, in cold blood for no good reason. It's insane.
I used to be what they call an auditor. The last guy anyone wants to see at their door. Because it meant you didn't have long to live.
So that doesn't work. The first act is pretty rough. It doesn't establish the main character as being a particularly likable, interesting, or even well-developed character. And the set-off to the story and motivation is weird and kind of backwards. But then we get into the second act, where most of the action scenes are, and most of the backstory to this main character is. And it's not great. I mean, the action, again, is very good, and when it's happening, it's fun, and Bob Odenkirk looks like he's having a great time, but there is a lot of exposition in this second act that explain in graphic detail who he is and why he's able to murder everybody. It's like if The Guest took the Brad Stevens, that's a coach. What's his name? Dan Stevens. And explained everything about his backstory. It's completely unnecessary. You can have one scene where he says, he's talking to that black Russian guy, and he's kind of giving him his backstory. And he goes, I was meant to go and fix people's problems, and then the guy dies. Just have that scene. You don't need anything else. But then he has another scene where he's talking to other almost dead Russians, and he explains his backstory even more, which was so unnecessary. He even says, I made this basement so that it will get hot enough to burn human bones. And I was like, why do you need to say that? Which leads me to a question more than an issue. Is this movie supposed to be funny? Because I know there are parts that are clearly supposed to be funny, like when the Russian bad guy flings a chair across the room and smashes one of his guys who was almost killed by Bob Odenkirk in the face with it. Now that's supposed to be funny. I mean, it's ridiculous. He hits a guy with a chair. But is Bob Odenkirk basically murdering these dudes on a bus supposed to be funny? Because I was laughing hysterically at how over the top it was. And I don't think it's supposed to be funny. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Is the majority of this movie intentionally supposed to be hilarious, or is some of it unintentionally funny? Because I kind of think it's the latter. I kind of think this is a little bit unintentionally funny. I don't know. It's weird. It's such a weird movie. There's so many things about it that I'm just like confused by. Like the first act having this weird setup and the second act having so much exposition in it. It's just a weird movie. But at the end of the day, it is a fun movie. Even if it's unintentionally funny, even if you're just laughing at the movie, that's still fun. And the action is legitimately great. So even if there are some things that aren't good in it, even if the structure is a mess, even if the exposition is over the top and completely unnecessary, I still had a good time with it. So if you want to watch a gratuitous action movie where people get mangled in front of your eyes and the ending is this completely over-the-top Home Alone-style action sequences with traps in a warehouse, I think you'll have fun with it. Like I did. I give it a 6. A solid 6. I was going to give it a 5 during the second act because I was really not grooving with it. But that Home Alone action sequence near the end was pretty fun. And watching RZA snipe people and use the recoil on a sniper to punch some guy was really funny to me. So, yeah, 6. Check it out if you want to. I don't know.